Charlie Kirk has made clear he believes people should be disciplined, fired, harassed, imprisoned, deported, and targeted because of not only their political beliefs, but also due to their immutable characteristics, such as their sexual preference, country of origin, immigration status, race, and gender. No one deserves to be killed for any of these things, and that's a fundamental difference between the far left and the far right. Because we truly believe in democracy and fundamental freedoms, including the right to bodily sovereignty and free speech, we do not believe in silencing, threatening, or killing people because we disagree with them. Charlie Kirk was not a free speech warrior. He has claimed censorship despite having a huge, well-funded platform that he has always used to smear, threaten, and silence those he disagrees with, demonizing and spreading hate for the most marginalized, targeting people with much less wealth, power, and influence than himself. One of his first projects was starting a website called Professor Watchlist to target professors who expressed political views he didn't like. He even added a professor who had a habit of fact-checking his social media claims to the list in retaliation, and this led to him and all the other people on the list getting violent threats. Liberals that are falling over themselves to say something nice about Charlie Kirk, I have to ask, why? What do you think Kirk's reaction would have been if it had been a centrist Democrat talking head instead of him? Would he have forced himself to find common ground and praise that person? The man who said empathy was damaging, who was silent as Trump stood and said Democrats should be hated and are the enemy. The man who encouraged his followers to revolt when Trump lost the election. Is that doing politics right? I'll give Kirk the benefit of not speaking of him the way he would have spoken of me and people like me if I had been the one shot. Kirk's supporters have mirrored the hypocritical free speech for me, not for thee philosophy, even in the coverage of his death. Not only do they obviously and deliberately misrepresent his legacy, but have done everything to silence and punish those expressing views for Kirk that they disagree with. One professor has already lost their job for stating an opinion on Kirk's political beliefs. Another news anchor was fired for indicating correctly that whether or not Charlie Kirk believed in political violence, he often mirrored the rhetoric behind it. That's just a fact. The Great Replacement theory and red-pilled misogyny were the core motivations of the pathetic neo-Nazi who killed 77 people at a workers' youth league summer camp in Norway. And out of respect for the people of Norway, I will not mention his name because they do not want his name to be remembered. Several mass shootings and countless acts of violence in the United States were motivated by these same views Charlie Kirk espoused and helped to popularize. Moments before he was shot, he repeated the absolutely false claim that trans people make up a disproportionate percentage of mass shooters. The shot itself interrupted him using a racist dog whistle to blame mass shootings on black people. However, white cishet men are the vast majority of mass shooters, and the vast majority of political violence is committed by the far right. Just this summer, Ann Coulter said that we did not kill enough Native American people. Brian Kilmeade said that homeless people should face involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them, is what he said. A candidate for Texas House posted this. I'm not going to comment on this. Apparently some people were confused, though, because they thought that she really liked threats, so they started sending her threats. And I'm not going to pretend that the threats that she faced were all right, but they certainly aren't equivalent to her threats when she actually has the power to enact a genocide. We do not have a far-left Kyle Rittenhouse, and if we did, we wouldn't celebrate him. But Charlie Kirk did. He introduced Kyle Rittenhouse as a hero to millions at the Turning Point USA's America Fest. Now, it seems likely that the shooter was actually a terminally online groyper, that is, a follower of Nick Fuentes. But it doesn't really matter because the far left will be blamed and punished anyway. The misinformation has gone so far that this is what the people who want to believe this already believe. The fascists are always at war with the far left. They cannot tolerate the existence of any ideas, lifestyles, values, and people different from themselves. The right has no interest in liberty beyond that of the owning classes. Nor do they want freedom of speech for anyone but themselves. They don't even claim to. They pretend that anyone protesting, not wanting to host, or disagreeing with the horrible things they say, or seeing them for what they are, is censorship. And oh, how their right to free speech has been limited as we're hearing it broadcasted 24/7 on a loudspeaker, as they still claim how much they've been canceled and constantly censored, which they detail in sound bites and long-form interviews on the news and cable networks, in all the major papers, print media, and in best-selling books on AM and FM and satellite radio, and across all social media channels. You just can't hear enough about how much they aren't allowed to talk. But like all mouthpieces for the owning classes, the US government has rarely censored or limited the free speech of fascists, especially in recent times. Neither major party is calling for the return of the fairness doctrine across media, and even that was only used to make sure both parties of capitalism were always represented. It never assured representation of the far left. And this doesn't mean the left is blameless. We often fall short of our ideals, favoring democracy, collective power, egalitarianism, and solidarity over the tactics of the violent, totalitarian far right. But regardless of what we do, we will suffer the most from the government crackdowns in response to this. Our free speech, like any speech that questions or challenges the status quo, is most at risk of being silenced, which is why the left has no excuse. We must be on the side of free speech, and we are never on the side of the government having more power over the working class. Charlie Kirk was a pathetic coward and insecure failure. Like all fascists, he hid his fear behind constant rage at those different from himself, while sucking up to those in power and attacking, demonizing, and blaming the powerless. Maybe he actually knew what the left believes, maybe he actually knew what feminism is, but he made damn sure his followers never did. There's a saying, don't debate fascists. But the truth is, fascists will do everything to avoid a debate, especially with a leftist. Their ideas are horrific, and they know it. They have no interest in defending them with facts. They can only attack the ideas of others, usually by lying about what others believe, bolstered by lies and smoothed over with dramatic appeals to emotion. Charlie Kirk was not unique and didn't have original ideas. In fact, I had to re-record sections of this many times by virtue of how easy it is to mix him up with someone like Steven Crowder or Tucker Carlson or any number of people who have failed at being a decent human being and rejected all the things we know to actually be worth fighting for. Fascism is a shining beacon to the worst people in the world, to the bullies who lack creativity, who think empathy is a curse. He may be used as a martyr for people who only pretend to care about free speech in order to silence others. Because fascism is an ideology of failure for people who have failed as human beings in the worst possible of ways. Not failing in achieving wealth or success, failing in their very lack of humanity. And when they fail, and inevitably they will, he will be forgotten, while those he hated so much and sought to destroy, whatever is left of them, will be left to pick up the pieces and build a better world from the one they burned to the ground, unless we stop them first.